Stoph for president 2028.
Fight.
Every single person has to have a gym membership. It's a requirement by law.
It is.
You have to go to the gym 4 days a week, minimum.
If you have over 30% body fat, you get put into a camp and you have to work it off.
Jeez. Internment camps for the morbidly obese. We'll do like 30% for men and like 45% for women.
Exemptions for Latinos.
Jeez. We all know what you like now. But
where did that come from?
Stoph had an idea, and I think it's a good idea. And what is your idea for today's episode?
Yeah, this is all following this past weekend's, or weeks. No, it was the weekend. This past weekend's incident that occurred in Pennsylvania, where former President Trump and soon-to-be President Trump, current President Trump, will be, an assassination attempt occurred. And for those who either somehow didn't hear about it or didn't see clips of it, which if you haven't at this point, God forbid, I don't know, you don't.
We do have a lot of like international listeners too. So
this is international news.
Yeah, the U.S. is typically international use.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
Even world leaders. There was the Iranian president just recently.
I don't remember.
Iranian. Yeah, he got one of them got killed in a helicopter crash very recently. But regardless,
okay.
The thing that I kind of was taken away by was the fact that after he got shot, he started fist pumping to the crowd and saying, and that, I mean, he did get nicked in the ear, but you're talking about a near death experience, because if you watch the video, he turns his head to say something, and that's when the bullet whizzes by him. So it's wild. But regardless, to us showed some form of, whether it's determination, dedication, something like that. We kind of took it like a physicality thing, because a lot of people, and I would assume as much, I can't really relate to this experience, but I would assume a lot of people in that situation would be cowering after that happened, like not in a state of functionality. And this man got up and started fist bumping. So I texted Paul and was like, hey, what if we ranked the most like fit presidents of all time, like their physicality, put it on display. So we'll be doing a lot of research for you guys in front of you, but there's already some wild names that already come to my mind. But it's we're basically just gonna do the S tier ranking, where, for those of you who don't know, I mean, this happens with like movies and TV shows,
anything,
and things like that.
Honestly,
yeah,
anything you can rank. There, somebody's probably done a tier ranking system of it.
Yep, and basically we'll put up a screen that has it starts with S tier, S for it's either superior or supreme, whatever you want to go with, and then A, B, C, and then F. And basically we're just going to go through all the presidents. We have some images pulled up for all of them. We'll go in and do a little bit of research for some of the guys, and just kind of rank these guys. So the real question is, do we start at the beginning with President numero uno, or the current president?
You'll probably work our way back, and I think we should set the guideline that like this is as like where they were physically during their time in office.
Yeah.
Because it would be a very different conversation if we're talking about like their peak form, and it's also is tough too, because like especially in the beginning in the 1700s, it's not really any like record of like John Adams was like chiseled to the fucking gills. Like we don't know, so we'll just kind of guess based off of photos and stuff like that, and portraits, paintings.
Black Rifle Coffee. Have you ever seen their ad for? It's just I forget what it's for, a new selling option for them, but basically they do this thing where George Washington rides in on a tank and he's wearing sleeveless whatever the outfit was called, and he's absolutely diced.
Just yoked out of his mind. That's kind of how I pictured George Washington in my head, just an absolute fucking menace. Which we'll go over why this dude was crazy back in that day, like why he would be like a genetic specimen now.
Yep.
And I mean, it's crazy. I mean, Shane Gillis had a whole bit about how his teeth were like horse and donkey
Yeah.
teeth or whatever, and it's like this dude's got like literal lead just seeping into his gums all day. Like that's not something that's not conducive to like a sane person. It's gonna make you go crazy having lead just seeping
No,
into your system all day.
that's legit. What are you talking about?
Yeah. Wife is calling me. Let me shoot her a text. All right.
Cool. Well,
Yeah, so we got the tier list made up, so we can just go ahead and get started on it.
if you want to
I'll just
share
share
that,
my
so we can
entire
keep that
window.
going. Yep.
Yeah.
Oh.
Here we go.
Yeah, I mean, and a lot of this we'll do our best to leave politics out of this, but there are some pretty glaring pieces for our first boy right here. I mean, let's cite the bike video first.
Let's go ahead and just. I think it's a pretty fair F for Joe Biden already.
Yeah, I mean, not even commenting on the stuff that gets brought up in the news in terms of like what the right is saying or anything like that, but literally just off of material that we have a video of him struggling to get off a bike, which to each their own. Maybe he messed up. We have a video of him with his golf swing, and from a person who is pretty damn good at golf, it is not a good swing. It is certainly not an 8 handicap like he quoted.
Yeah,
but-
people are like, if he's an 8 handicap, I'm fucking Tiger Woods.
Yep.
He may have
But
been
he
an
also
8 handicap in his prime.
Yeah. He also just doesn't have a lot of moments with different teams. Like, oftentimes, presidents will get involved with, the NBA champions, or they go and they throw out a first pitch or something like that. And we just don't have anything on that sort, so we kind of have to toss him immediately in the F jar.
Yeah, he just isn't. I can't imagine that if something were to happen where he have to escape, he could just sprint. I don't think it'll happen. That's kind of one of my thoughts. Is like I don't think he'd have trouble running away.
If we had to have our presidents fight against all the other world leaders for dominance, we are not the leaders of the free world anymore.
Oh, we're fucked. We're screwed. We're screwed. One punch assassin, Joe Biden.
Yep. And I think also good time to identify that when we go through this list, we're not obviously Paul and I talk all the time about lifting and bodybuilding and anything that is involved with that, but with this presidential list, athletics plays a big factor. Like if they were athletes at one point, if they've completed feats of accomplishment, stuff like that. It's not really going off of if they have 6-pack abs, 24-inch pythons. Like we're not going off of stuff like that. We're going off of what each person has in their own athletic capacity, which again, Joe Biden, we just don't really have anything from him. I could take a quick look, but I don't think he as a younger man took part in anything outstanding athletically.
Yeah, not that I'm aware of. He's been a career politician. He's been in politics his whole life. So, from my understanding. So, I mean, I'm not sure anything beyond that. But moving on to the next one, I think I would play Trump in D. That's my personal opinion.
I was going to say right before we get into that, though, I did one quick Google search, and apparently Joe Biden in his much, much younger years, we're talking high school years. Oh, no, never mind. That's actually super incredibly offensive. Oh, well, we're not going to say that one. He used to have a nickname which was an athletic nickname, but he actually was being made fun of for it. So we're actually just going to skip over that.
All right. Yep. Sounds good. But yeah, so Donald Trump, D, I think he can move, and like if you have to run, I think he could. But like this dude eats McDonald's every day. Like he drinks Diet Cokes like nobody's business. I mean, he's not exactly the most fit guy, especially in office. But granted, a lot of these guys are also very old. We got to keep that in mind. Like Donald Trump is in his upper 70s at this point. Joe Biden in his lower 80s. So, they're all pretty old gentlemen for the most part. For those that don't know, in the U.S., you have to be a minimum of 35 years old in order to serve. So some of these guys are on the younger side,
To serve
but
as
most of these
president.
guys are pretty old. Yeah, to serve as president. Yeah, so you have to be a minimum of 35 years old to serve as president. Some are younger. The majority of them are 50s, 60s, and maybe 70s for their age. Obviously, the lower the number of president chronologically, the lower the life expectancy. So, 60s back in the 1700s was pretty old. Or now 60s is below the life expectancy for men. It's 72 right now for men in the US, which is fucking awful. With modern medicine, it should be higher than that. But with that said, Donald Trump, upper 70s. I think for his age, he's in really good shape, but he's not in good shape in general.
Yeah, I certainly don't think tossing him in a high tier, but I think a C tier, one tier higher, just because from a golf standpoint, like if we're talking athletics, including golf, he is still, I mean, better golfer than me right now, and I'm a single digit handicap. So it's, I mean, a lot of it is fluffed up, so you have to find it in reports from people who are not him. He's because obviously we know how he is. He fluffs it up, but you're right. He certainly got a terrible diet. I think there was a report during his presidency that came out that he, for like some fancy dinner where he invited people in, didn't really touch much of the food that was there, and then afterwards had like $50 worth of McDonald's brought to the White House.
Not surprised. Not surprised. Yeah, he loves his McDonald's. I don't remember what his orders were. I want to say it was McChickens. I can't remember though. But yeah, he's pretty open about his love for McDonald's. So I think C is pretty fair.
I'll certainly say we have someone who's going to crack a higher category next.
Yeah, I would say Barack either A or S, to be honest.
Well,
what do you think?
He, for one, comparatively to the two that we just ranked, he has incredible physique. I mean, he was a president in his 60s, and in his 60s he was, tall and slender, but very well kept together, and he is actually a pretty damn good basketball player. So I think for me, I'm leaning towards A, just because we don't have like, I'm not going to say you need to have records to be in S tier, but there has to be something that identifies you as exemplary above everybody else, which I don't have from our boy Barack. For anyone, I realize for those who are just listening, we're talking about Barack Obama right now. We haven't actually said his name, but yeah, I don't have any information on, exemplary things he's done, but he's fit. He's a great tennis player too. He just he does a pretty good job of keeping himself fit, and even now he's still pretty fit.
Yeah, he keeps up with it, which is good. Moving on from there is George Bush. So this is George W. Bush, not George H.W. Bush, which we'll get into later. But George W. Bush, I'd probably put in B because I think he was in better shape in office than Trump was, but I wouldn't say he's quite Obama.
Yeah,
That's
I mean,
what I think.
He'll always have a special place in terms of sports in my mind, because on September 12th or September 13th, when they had the next game, he threw out the first pitch at the Mets game, and it was such a moment, and to have him do that, and he's a former baseball player as well, it certainly puts him up there. So I think that's a good placement. You're right, he's certainly above both Joe Biden and Donald Trump, but he doesn't have anything super noteworthy of, exemplary status. Like, yes, he threw out the first pitch during that time, but not really anything else to speak of, and he certainly doesn't have a leg up on Obama.
Perfect. Yeah, so Bill Clinton, I think, is kind of I put probably in the same place, kind of B. I mean, when we rank here, I don't think there's in any particular order. Like, I wouldn't say like, it's kind of hard to say like, oh, he's better than George Bush, in
Mm.
B tier. I would just say he just belongs in B tier. He had that whole affair with his assistant or whatever, so we know that he's able to at least pull some women. There's that.
I was trying to see where you're going with that.
Pull some women. He's got some game, and I
Yeah.
don't think he'd be able to do that if he wasn't in the best shape, if he was in bad shape at least.
Ability to dish game makes you good physical standing. If that's a metric, though, we have to bump Trump up. Like, seriously. Because Trump had his affair with Stormy Daniels during his original presidency.
Oh yeah, that's true. I don't know. He's still just not in good shape though.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Yep. But yeah, so I think Bill Clinton just pretty. A lot of these guys are very average guys as far as their build goes. So it's like B is probably where a lot of these average guys are going to fall under, just because they could probably run away, they'd be fine. I mean, they could probably, like you said, like throw a pitch, they're probably play some golf. So they can hold their own. Then from there is actually there's another one, George H.W. Bush. So George H.W. Bush, I would probably put in B during his presidency. Prior to his presidency, he had pretty successful runs in sports and all that. He's a big baseball player. He was a captain on the Yale baseball team. And he always kept a mitt in the presidential office, the Oval Office. So, let me see. He also helped the Yale basketball team achieve the first two national title games for Yale in 47, 48. Granted, they lost, but they're able to make it to that national title game. So he had a really good, successful time in sports prior to his presidency, but in the presidency, I mean, I think he's kind of in the same place as George Bush, where I think he could hold his own. I think he'd be okay. Somebody shot at him, he'd probably be able to run away, no problem.
I love that
So
that standard. If you're being shot at, kid, you run away.
yeah, I couldn't trust Biden running away. I mean, dude doesn't even know where he's going. He doesn't even know who he's walking to. So
Yep.
a lot of Biden's issues is mental, but also he's in his 80s, so I'm not expecting him to be able to run a marathon.
What I think is kind of interesting is, when you think of men in the Republican Party, you think of, people who try to be or are extremely, masculine, like be the exemplary status of manlyhood. And so far we have a Democrat at the top. I think that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, but that will quickly change. Granted, a lot of the political standings have been different over the years, so you eventually get to the point where it's like not really Democratic or Republican. It's like there's all kinds of different parties. But now it's, the past like 100 years at least, it's been like Democrat or Republican. So the next one's going to be Ronald Reagan. He served when he was, let me see. So he lived until he was about, was that like 93 or so? And then he died in 2004. So he would have been like mid 70s. Like he would have been in his 70s when he was in office. So, I mean, personally, I think 70s, I mean, I feel like 70s, you got to be at least C, because that's on the older side already. And he never really had any sort of like athletic past that I'm aware of.
He used to have, I just did a quick look at it, but he has, and we're going to bump him up, but he used to have how
Okay.
to stay, it was like a newspaper, how to stay fit with Ronald Reagan, but he's the one that brought around the presidential fitness. Do you remember taking that
Oh,
as a kid?
yeah. Yeah,
I
that was
remember
very
having,
pointless because they never trained you for it. You just took a test. That's all it was.
I was going to say, I remember it was one day in elementary school. It was like the day before field day or something like that, and we're all just in the gym doing whatever, and we had to go behind like a curtain, and there was the pull-up bar, and they were like, hold a pull-up for 30 seconds or something like that.
Hmm.
And you had to sit there and hold it, that you had to try and do all these other things. But yeah, he I believe he's the one that created the presidential fitness exam. Let me fact check that, but presidential fitness, never mind, not by him. Lyndon Johnson had that.
Okay, which will be way before
A
that.
couple, yeah. Oh, but here's another thing that says Eisenhower had it. Hmm. Well, point being, a
Anyways,
lot of people have made, different efforts to improve the fitness of America, which I think speaks to their, even if they don't have the physical standing, it speaks to their understanding that a fit population is a strong population, unlike now where we
hmm
have a bunch of lard balls walking around and shoving everything in their face. And if we, I mean, I know we just put together a the draft. It's not a draft, but it requires all men 18 to 26 to be eligible for a draft. Should we draft? This
hmm
was a couple months ago that passed. If that happens, if we get to the point where we need to draft, we're not going to be in good shape because a large chunk of men in the United States are. I mean, we've used soy boys before as as a term on this
hmm
podcast, but people who could not hold their own physically in any standard whatsoever.
Yeah, it's also the mental aspect too. People were
Yep.
just tougher back in the day
Yep.
mentally. It was just something you did. It was just how you were, especially during like World War II and all that, which we'll get into later on. But
Hmm.
yeah, so with that said, Jimmy Carter, who's still around as of right now, according to, I mean, the most trustful news source or source of all time, which is Wikipedia.
I was gonna say.
Um, yeah, he was in his like mid 50s when, so this is Jimmy Carter, mid 50s or so when he served. Um, I mean, I can even like, so just for that reason, I mean, I'd have to put him in at least B. Mid 50s, you're still pretty active. I mean, I know some of the youngest people I know are in their 50s and even 60, 61, 62, you know.
Mm.
It just depends on, it's all a mindset, you know. So, probably put him in B for that reason, but that's just where I'm at. What do you think?
The only thing that I can really come up with for something that speaks to his physicality is that himself, as well as his family, is a big hunting family. And for
Mm,
anybody who's ever been hunting, it's not for it's not going to the woods with a rifle and shoot something. You have to, well, if you're posting up in a tower, that's a little different. But if you're doing live hunting, you have to stalk your animal. You have to keep yourself quiet while moving. You have to have stamina, endurance to hold, your shot and everything. So I think, and for someone who, by the way, if someone grows up hunting, they hunt their entire lives. There's not many people who give it up because it's such a reliable skill to have, like to provide food for yourself. So I think B tier is good for him. He
okay.
gives a good, vibe.
hmm Cool. Sounds good to me. The next one is one of the best or most successful sports careers of
Yeah.
his time, prior to his presidency. So that is going to be Gerald Ford, who served when he was early 60s. I mean, I would probably put him, to be honest, an A.
I was gonna say he's up there.
Yeah, because he had a very successful time at Michigan for football, 1932 and 1933, and he was their MVP in 1934. So, pretty successful football there, and that builds a lot of sturdiness. And I bet you this guy in his early 60s, even a presidency, could probably tackle someone pretty hard if he wanted to. So that's kind of where I'm at there. I think A is definitely fair because we got to save S for different guys later on.
Yeah, and for Gerald Ford, there's, from what I could find, only one video of him playing football, and he's set up as a linebacker, and this was before certain rules were in place for how the game operates now. But the snap happens. He, off the line, he's shifting into a zone coverage as a linebacker, and he picks off the pass. And at that point, I don't think there were returns on picks or anything like that, because right after he catches it one-handed, but then he just throws it right back to the quarterback. It's like one of the coldest things I've seen.
And those guys there was no protection really back then. I mean, there was like leather caps. Yeah. It wasn't anything good. I mean, those guys would get fucked up. It's like rugby kind of, but like more intense, because rugby, if it was extremely dangerous to the point, like as far as like concussions and all that goes, they'd be wearing helmets, but rugby isn't there, so there isn't those requirements. So I'm assuming that football back then is a lot more intense than rugby is now. But yeah, it's in that same ballpark as far as like physicality goes. But in the presidency, I think that, yeah, he could totally probably fucking hold his own if he were to play some football.
And
Next
that's
one.
to a lot of guys who have that prior football. It's the same thing with hunting. Would people, football players stay sturdy and well built their entire lives? There's very few, even O-line and D-line guys. Yes, they have a lot of fat, but they are some of the strongest people in the world. So he certainly kept something while he was president.
Definitely. Further from there would be Richard Nixon. I mean, he was in his mid to upper 60s or so. He was like 66 to 69, 70-ish when he served. So, I mean, personally, I probably would just I don't really know much about his physical stance as far as athleticism or anything like that goes.
Only thing I could pull up was he was a very avid bowler, and during the presidency as well. There's a lot of photoshopped images of him on very muscular bodies, but it appears that bowling was certainly something that he was well into. Other than that, I struggle to find much else.
Yeah, I would probably just say, honestly, C, just because I don't know if he'd hold his own like these guys, and B. And he doesn't have too much of a background. He has military background, but that was when he was really young. And military doesn't necessarily equate to good physical fitness. It should. It typically does, but not always. So it also depends, like, if you've seen, combat and all that plays a role too. You got to go through boot camp, but most people are able to go through boot camp as long as you're not, a little bitch, to be honest. As long as I know. I mean, if you can't make it through boot camp, I mean, you got to reevaluate your life, to be honest. It might not be easy, but I mean, most people go through boot camp and get through it, no problem. It's not like, it's not like SEAL training or something like that. So, that's pretty much where I'm at. Lyndon Johnson is the next one. What do you think for Lyndon Johnson, president number 36? He served when he was like 55 to like 61 or so years old. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm not, in terms of what I looked up for what, like, in terms of what I could find for information on what he did, I don't really have much on him. We brought up earlier the presidential fitness, so there's that, but from him himself, I really don't have anything. He was a big guy. We'll start with that. I believe he was on the taller end, but yeah, no, I really don't have much for him.
Let me look up his height. I'm curious what he was.
I only say that because there are images of him leaning over people.
He was 6'4". Holy shit, this dude's a unit. Like you, Stoph. He was a unit.
I was gonna say he's my height.
Yeah. I mean, I would probably just say C. Probably. He was a career politician. I mean, he never was anything physical. I mean, if you look up like his past and all that, it was literally just all politics from 37 to like 69 when he was done his presidency. So I mean, that's 33 years of politics. I mean, it's like Biden. You're just a career politician. You just sit down all day in meetings. So that's where I'd put him. John Kennedy is the next one. First one on the list that didn't fulfill his term because of an assassination. He was only able to serve for 2 years and some change
Yeah.
before Lyndon Johnson took over as vice president, becoming president because of the assassination. So, but with that said, he was like 50, like early 50s, and he was a pretty active guy, like as far as like seeing the public and stuff like that. Like a lot of his like he was in the Naval Reserves during World War II, but as far as like when he was running for president and all that, he would actually go like basically house to house, like promoting himself basically so that people would vote for him. So for me, that says a lot. It's a lot of walking, a lot of moving around and all of that in order to lobby yourself in that way. So I probably would put him in A, to be honest. That's kind of where I'm at with him. Not much physical history, but at the time of presidency, he was able to go from house to house and, get people to vote for him.
He has a plethora of health problems.
Does he really? I didn't know that.
He wore a back brace.
All right, we'll go ahead and go there.
What was it? He had something when he was a kid. Scarlet fever when he was a kid. Obviously, that doesn't. It's not as much back when he was an adult, but that still affects how he was able to eat. He had muscle spasms.
All right. I stand corrected. We will put him in C. Probably. I mean, do you think we should put him in D then?
Quoted from CBS News, Kennedy, who suffered from chronic back pain, was wearing a heavy corset-like brace that went from his chest to below his waist. He believes it cost Kennedy his life. Obviously, we know that he was assassinated, so he doesn't mean it in that sense, or the article doesn't mean in that sense. It means that, like, his inability to move, and this likely would have taken his life had he continued to have, a presidency and extended life.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll just put him in D then, just because he was probably going to die not too long after that due to his issues. So we'll keep him there. The next one is Dwight D. Eisenhower, which may have been the one that did the presidential fitness test. But I think he has a lot of military experience. So when he served in office, he was, what was he, like 63 to like 70 or so, but he had a lot of military background. So a lot of those guys are typically, especially when you're, he was almost like a lifetime military, member before his presidency. He wasn't into politics too much until his presidency. I believe he served in World War II and all that. So like he was up there. I mean, granted, he was at the, the highest ranks where it's not as physical. But typically those guys are always involved in training and stuff like that, and staying up to date with all of that to make sure that, their troops are trained up and everything. So I mean, personally, probably C, but I have no idea on this one.
Yeah, I'd give him roughly that, maybe B if we're being generous, but his military background is a big piece. But he had, in office, he had a stroke, he had congestive heart failure. He died of congestive heart failure. So if we're generous, we'll give him B because of what he was able to do militarily, but realistically, he's in that C tier.
All right, cool. That works for me. I mean, that all happened after his presidency as far as his passing, because he served he was done presidency 8 years prior to his passing. So he died at 79, which at the time is pretty old considering he died in 1969. So with that said, next one's Harry S. Truman. What do we got there? I mean, he was...
Go ahead. He's not the one that was Truman the one that couldn't walk?
No. We'll get to him later. The person who couldn't walk.
In terms of health stuff, as reported by his physician, Wallace Graham, that's the physician, Truman had episodes of biliary colic during his presidency. Let's see, but he continued to experience excellent health until July 1952, near the end of his second term. So it seems like during his presidency, he was doing just pretty darn fine.
Okay, I would say probably middle of the pack, then probably C.
Yeah, nothing outstanding. No real, if we're thinking athletics, we don't have really anything on him. But he was able to finish his terms, and that's as we go deeper in this list, that's honestly going to be a factor.
Yeah, whether or not they finish their term or not. So yeah, so that will be Harry Truman. So the next one is the one who couldn't walk, which is Franklin D. Roosevelt.
He's not going to really be able to put him very high up there.
Yeah, but the thing is like he was able to hide it by wearing leg braces and walking out on stage and stuff like that. So he did have the mental aspect.
That's true.
Yes, he was in a wheelchair behind closed doors, but he was able to fight through the pain when he was giving his speeches and stuff like that to get through. What was it that he had?
Polio, isn't that what that is? When you that timetable, I feel like that's what that was.
Let me check.
No, polio is a sickness. What am I thinking of?
I mean, polio really does mess you up. Permanently paralyzed from the waist down. Yeah, it was because of polio.
It was polio? Okay.
Yeah, he was paralyzed from the waist down. As far as how he's able to walk out on stage, I have no clue. You have to hobble or something. But, I mean, he's able to fool everybody. Nobody even really knew he was in a wheelchair for the longest time. So, yeah, so we'll just put him in probably, I would say D. Give him points for his mental ability to push through and deal with polio for a lot of his life. But, I mean, he was wheelchair bound.
Yeah.
So, but granted, he was also what got us through World War II. So, one of the greatest presidents of all time.
Yep.
He was a tank.
I will say that's certainly on the political and thinking side of things. Yeah.
I'm just giving him props for that. That's all. That has nothing to do with this physical aspect.
No doubt.
Yeah. So next will be Herbert Hoover, which served when he was 55 or so, up until he's about 60 on the younger side. He was a minor for a long time.
Do you know this the story about Hoover? What happened when he was in office regarding sports?
No, what happened there?
They made a mini sport called Hoover Ball.
Nuh-uh, what was it?
A Hoover Ball was a combination of a bunch of sports, but it was created by the physicians at the White House to keep him physically fit. But they literally made a sport to help this man stay fit.
I mean, I'd probably put him in C just for that at least.
I'd put him higher, honestly. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean Hoover Ball, combination of tennis, volleyball, and medicine ball. What? How does that work? You just lob a heavy ass ball over a net.
That
required less skill than.
Is that not the beginning of strongman? Throwing the bags over the bar?
Well, it says requires less skill. This is what he wrote in his memoir. Required less skill than tennis, was faster and more vigorous, and therefore gave more exercise in a short time.
Yeah, he's literally started powerlifting.
A friend of his said, Will Irwin said in a 1931 article, it is more strenuous than either boxing, wrestling, or football. The president watches his waistline and has the virtue of getting at nearly every muscle in the body. So we're going to go ahead and
throw that man up there.
This dude's crazy.
We just got a quote that the president was watching his waistline. Tell me any other president so far that's been watching his waistline.
Yeah. So it was played by teams of 2 to 4 players with a 6-pound medicine ball over a net 8 feet high on a court similar to one for tennis. The game was scored exactly like tennis and played in a similar fashion. The server throws the ball. The opponent must catch it on the fly and immediately return it, attempting to put it where it cannot be reached and returned.
You know what?
So
I've seen what bodybuilder nowadays? Samson? No, maybe not Samson Dowda. One of the African American bodybuilders currently. There's videos of him doing he's taking a medicine ball and hucking it over a volleyball net. I think I remember seeing that.
Yeah, it's literally just volleyball with a medicine ball. Is literally what it is.
Yeah.
So instead of hitting it, because you can't hit a medicine ball, so instead of hitting it, they would catch it and throw it back.
Mm.
So yeah, this dude had to be in decent shape for that. That's for sure. I mean, volleyball and tennis are both very hard. So, yeah, yeah, we'll just go ahead and put him in A then. In that case, if he could keep up with Hoover ball, then we can go ahead and throw him in A.
That's incredible.
The previous one is Calvin Coolidge. He served from being about 51 to about 55 or so. Not much.
He died young, so
Yeah, yeah, he died. He went to Amherst College. Interesting. Yeah, he died when he was like 50 or 61, which back then is pretty expected. I mean, he died in 1933. I mean, that's pretty expected.
I do have to say, when we did Roosevelt, we we have to bump Roosevelt up one. I just found a report that said he swam 3 times a week despite his
Damn,
paralysis from polio.
that is
And
not easy.
or I was gonna say swimming for anybody who has never done. Obviously, swimming in a lake is different, but anybody who's ever tried to do lane swimming, that might be one of the most taxing cardiovascular exercises you can possibly do.
I mean, look at how much food Michael Phelps had to eat every day
Yeah,
just to keep up with his swimming.
and
You know, you
he's
burn crazy
not a
calories.
big dude.
Yeah, no, I mean, Michael Phelps is, yeah, but not Franklin Roosevelt. But yeah, Calvin Coolidge. I mean, he just seemed like a career politician. Not much could find out. At least from my side, I'm not seeing much about like his physical stance. I mean, we're getting to the point where it's like there wasn't really many sports going around. Like there was stuff in place. You know, I mean, baseball and all that was around at this time, but like he it wasn't like he was a professional baseball player at the time. I mean,
Yeah,
you know, the teens is really when like baseball started to pick up and different cities would have different teams and all that, and they would travel to play. So I mean, I would probably just say like, being that he died not too long after that, either C or D. What do you think? Probably C.
I'm thinking D.
Yeah.
He's a 50s death. That's. I know earlier, like we're talking early on 1900s, and I understand life expectancy isn't what it is today, but still dying in your, I want to say it's 50s. Let me see.
It was 61, I believe, when he died.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, look at this. This is a report from. What's the report from? I'm not seeing the citation, but Calvin Coolidge slept excessively. He slept around 11 hours a day.
yeah, good for him. That's a lot of sleep.
Yeah.
That's good. But yeah, he died of coronary thrombosis, which I think is basically just like a heart attack.
Yeah.
Essentially, it's a myocardial infarction. Yeah, it's pretty much just a heart attack. Your blood flow stops within your heart. So, yeah, so we'll just put him at D, I guess. Died of a heart attack shortly after his presidency, so he could not have been in that good of shape at the time. Next one is Warren G. Harding. I know nothing about him.
He's
He only
gonna
served
be-
for.
yeah,
Well, he was.
he's
It
gonna
looks
be
like he
in
was
the
assassinated.
not assassinated. He just died.
Oh, he just died. He died in his bed.
It's He, in
It seems.
July of 1923, while on a Western trip, he developed an episode of abdominal pain and fever.
Yeah, acute gastrointestinal attack is what killed him in his sleep.
Yeah, I mean, what was his age, though? That's really 57. So I can't really put him up too high. That's got to be D or even F, to be honest with you.
Yeah, we could go with F, just because it was pretty quickly into his presidency. He only served a couple of years, but he was prescribed with liquid caffeine and digitalis. Not sure exact. It's medication to help with various heart conditions, but
You're
liquid
telling me
caffeine.
That's what's getting me, because for anybody in the fitness industry, we know that caffeine hurts nowadays, like in terms of like affecting your heart and your cardiovascular system. Like it puts it into overdrive, and you can't do that excessively. So for that to be prescribed as the medication, I think
Yeah.
that's just a show, like a clear show and tell of how early medicine isn't
Hmm.
isn't all that, you know.
Yeah, this is like World War One era almost.
A little bit
I
after,
mean, it's
yeah.
like, yeah, it's like it's really not. I mean, that was when they called PTSD shell shock. Wasn't really modern medicine was not really around at the time.
Today, most historians accept that Harding, 57, died from a heart attack brought on by ample evidence of cardiac problems, but that wasn't the original cause of death issued in
Hmm.
1923, as rumors, died of effects of a stroke. So overall,
Okay.
just was not doing well.
Yeah, yeah, he just got in the bad time. Even he
Yeah,
wasn't even that old. He was like 50.
57.
Yeah, yeah, he was in his 50s, so not that old. Um, Next one is Woodrow Wilson. Woodrow
I don't
Wilson.
know anything off the top of my head.
Yeah, I mean, he served when he was upper 50s or so. He was um, he was the guy who
Oh,
led the
wow.
United States into World War One, 1917. So he was in presidency during a lot of World War One. But I mean, he was a lifetime politician, from what I can tell. I mean, academic career, like he was a governor of New Jersey before he became president, and then he died shortly after his
Wilson,
presidency.
yeah, but it's the end of his presidency. Wilson had intended to seek a third term in office, but suffered a severe stroke in 1919 that left him incapacitated. Not just we're not talking just like spaghettios. Like you come back from a lot of people come back from a stroke, and if they have you know verbal issues or physical issues, but this says incapacitated, and incapacitated means you are not functioning. So,
Yeah, you're a vegetable essentially at that point. I know people um, who've been through strokes and have gotten back from it.
yeah, I have a
Here,
friend who has had three.
one sec, one sec. I gotta do. And we are back. A little interruption there, but everything is all good. So we'll pick up where we left off, which is William Howard Taft. I would say, based off his photos, based off the fact that he was a lifetime politician, do we have anything on his health background while he was in presidency?
In 1910, was he in presidency during 1910?
Yes, he was from 1909
Uh,
to 1913.
had severely symptomatic sleep apnea. Not that that's
Mm,
really, I mean, that one's a tough one because sleep apnea, uh, a lot more people have sleep apnea than reported. So,
yeah,
let's see.
but it's also back then. It's also there's no like.
Gee, this guy's huge.
Yeah, yeah, he's a big dude. He's a big dude.
Yeah, we can't put this guy up at all. I hadn't even seen an image until, yeah,
Hmm.
that is a chonkers right there.
Yeah, I mean, sleep apnea now is not as bad as it used to be because now we have the apnea machines and all of that to help.
Yeah,
So it's basically, I mean, it's considered a disability now, at least half a disability. According to the military, it's half a disability. So it does affect you pretty dramatically, but you get a sleep apnea machine that works for you, then you can start getting some good sleep again.
mm,
But yeah, so we'll put him in F just because of his physical stance. You know, he died quite a bit after his presidency. He was the Chief Justice from 1921 to 1930. So he died for quite a bit after his presidency, but not in good shape. We can't really give him much higher than that.
yeah.
I think we are now, in my opinion, at the first S. In my
My
opinion,
personal favorite on this list when it comes to ranking physically.
yeah, he was considered one of the manliest presidents. He was a rough rider and was a fan of contact and combat sports, and was took up judo and jujitsu. and he was also a very outdoorsy guy. He was an outdoorsman. So this dude, I think, just served his term because that was his call to action. It was his duty to do so, but ultimately I think he wanted to, if it was his choice, he could probably just ride a horse all day and just live in the middle of nowhere.
He's got one of the coldest lines to have ever been said in a speech.
Which was what?
So we started the conversation talking about how Trump had an assassination attempt on him. There was an assassination attempt on Teddy Roosevelt, and he got shot in the chest. All right? We're not talking a nicked ear like Trump. Don't get me wrong, still very, very serious. But Roosevelt got shot in the chest. And prior to police intervention, he questioned his shooter and asked why he did it. And then
Damn.
it gets better. It's then he gets into the car that's going to bring him to where the speech is going to be. And he intentionally coughs in his hand to see if any blood comes out, because if blood comes out, you know you have lung damage. No blood comes out, and he looks at the driver and goes, "Bring me to the stage." He gets there. You know, obviously introductions are made, and he gets up on stage, and he says, "For those of you who don't," and this is paraphrased, but for those of you who aren't fully aware, I was just shot. And then this is the best line in anything that's ever been said. He said, "It takes more than a bullet to kill a bull moose."
Damn.
That's
This dude's crazy.
a hard line.
Yeah. That's wild. This is back when assassinations were pretty common, actually.
Yeah.
It was, people, it's easier to plan it. There wasn't obviously a lot of the technology nowadays, a lot of the firearms nowadays, it's a lot harder to protect the president back then. And we've also made leaps and bounds technology to protect the president, like the motorcade or whatever it's called, and all the bulletproof glass and stuff like that. So back then it's a lot harder to protect them. And we'll start seeing that, a lot more assassinations. So we'll say S for sure. That's pretty much a no-brainer in my opinion.
Speaking of assassinations, though, William McKinley.
Died of an assassination. Yep. Someone named Leon Zolgos or something like that. Hoped to assassinate him. McKinley's, I guess, let me see. Yeah, it was 2 bullets, I guess, but the doctor was able to locate the second bullet, and that's kind of what did him in, was like, he was in critical condition, and his condition just deteriorated. But, there's not really much going on as far as, like, his past. So, I would just say probably, given his stature...
Yeah, I'd say probably a C.
Yeah, it's tough to... he served when... let me see. Just had it here a second ago. He served when he was, like, 54 and some change, and then died in office. So, he looks older than his age. So that's why I would say probably D, because
D.
He looks older than 50s for sure.
Yeah, and looking into it, there wasn't a whole lot. There was a lot of the health issues are beliefs, not anything that's actually been confirmed. So can't really put it into the list too much.
Yeah, a lot of these guys now, it's going to be harder for us to rank. We just have to go based off of photos, really. Like the next one, Grover Cleveland. It's just like he was. It's not easy to find a lot of this stuff anymore. Like, there's not much documented. Obviously, medicine wasn't where it was today. There wasn't much known about health conditions and what could lead to different things and long preventative care. Based off of, for Grover Cleveland specifically, he was, 56 or so when he served, up until about 60-ish, roughly. He died 11 years after his presidency. So I would probably say, like, at this point, especially if you're on the older side, these guys can't be very physically fit, ultimately.
Yeah, and there's not much on him in terms of what I'm finding for health stuff. But He did have a pretty cool story regarding cancer. He found a tumor, like a lump tumor on the roof of his mouth, and during his presidency had a secret procedure to get rid of it. And this is, at mouth surgery, so it would be pretty clear, but he used his mustache to cover it up.
Mm-hmm.
So it's pretty cool with that, but that, I mean, can't really speak much to the presidency and his condition. There was a report that came out, or maybe it was a book. Let's see. No, this is. Oh, I guess it is a book. But it's called "The President is a Sick Man." So, like saying he's not in the best, but again, not a ton on him.
Yeah, well, a lot of these we're not going to find much. A lot of these I don't even really know. Like, next one is Benjamin Harrison. Same thing there. Not much to tell. I mean, he served in the Civil War. He was one of the guys who he fought for the Union Army, which was the North side. So for those that don't know American history, Civil War was the fight between North and South of the U.S. There's the Union versus the Confederacy. And basically what happened was Abraham Lincoln was calling for the freeing of the slaves, and the North was on his side, where the South was saying, no, we want our slaves, basically. And it became a civil war, and it technically, as far as deaths go, I want to say it's the bloodiest, or like most deaths of Americans, because obviously every casualty was American, out of all of the wars, World War II, World War One, any war preceding, Vietnam, stuff like that we've been involved in. But yeah, he joined the Union Army after Abraham Lincoln called for more recruits for the Union Army. But that's really all I could find out. Seemed like he was cavalry. He was horse. He would, ride a horse into battle. But as far as like during his presidency, I mean, this happened in 1862, and his presidency was 1889. So I mean, that's another 27 years after he enlisted. So quite a bit after that. So I mean, I would just say probably a lot of these guys are probably going to end up falling under D, considering the health of the time, and life expectancy wasn't very high. He died when he was like 68 or so. So
I was gonna say, in terms of looking at the rest of the presidents, because we're obviously going to be going off a very limited section of information, I really only have 3 more guys that have anything to speak of. So we potentially don't even need to go through all of them, just because, like you said, a lot of these guys are just going to fall into these, these kind of in-betweeners, because we just don't know enough about them. So, I mean, if you want just going to the next one that I have anything on, it's Ulysses S. Grant. I mean, this is... for those who, I mean, we were just talking about the Civil War, so for those who don't know, Ulysses S. Grant was the general, or one of the generals, fighting for the Union, and I mean, he's one of the more badass people, like as badass as you can come in terms of, what he did during his time. So. But again, it's tough to really have a whole lot.
I would say C, just in case.
Let me see if I can find anything on him.
Yeah, Rutherford B. Hayes was before that, which is this guy. I'll probably say B or D. I mean, let me see. James A. Garfield, or probably throwing D. A lot of these guys are. It's tough to say like what their health was like. Andrew Johnson.
Yeah, we're really just going off of pictures at this point, guys.
Yeah, I mean, really, the only other one I could think of is like James or Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah, Abe Lincoln was my second to last one that we have anything on, because he's just a specimen.
How tall was Abraham Lincoln? He looked pretty tall. He might not be.
6'4".
Yeah, so he's a pretty tall dude.
The tallest U.S. president.
Yeah, we'll throw him in C. I mean, this is at the point where life expectancy is low. I mean, a lot of these guys are dying pretty young.
I'll
the
say
next guy is
the only one that I really have going anywhere higher than, C or D is going to be our boy George Washington, and I have him in the S tier. So
yeah. So let's go. We'll throw the rest in D. A lot of these guys, it's not a lot of health, a lot of medical issues. What about Andrew Johnson? Is there more about him?
I feel like I've heard
Andrew
something.
Jackson.
Let me take a look.
Yeah, he fought, I guess,
Andrew
in
Jackson
the Revolutionary
dueled
War.
someone. That's what I remember. Andrew Jackson dueled someone.
Did he?
Let me. Jackson. Yeah, here it is. Jackson Dickinson duel.
He was in Kentucky.
And it was prior to his presidency. This is great. I mean, obviously, we're talking about a time when, like, for example, if Paul and I had a quarrel, or if you have
beef.
any kids, I was gonna say for any kids listening, if we had beef, instead of Paul and I fighting nowadays, you could just, and this was like a legally okay thing to do.
This is still technically legally okay if you consent to it, and it's like sanctioned and all that. You can still duel now in certain states, I believe.
But it was just widespread. You could do this, no consequences, but you could duel someone, which means you're each given a pistol. You take 10 strides, on either side. And then there's a countdown to 3, and then you just fire. And this was something that was completely okay. And Jackson was a contributor to this. Let's see.
In 1788 was his first duel. They both fired into the air, not at each other, and then shook hands and left unhurt. And that was it. They just settled their issues. The second duel was more serious, 1806 against Charles Dickinson.
Well, and so this is it. The quarrel between the two men began as comments were made by Dickinson about Jackson's wife. Part of the argument also related to Dickinson accusing Jackson of cheating on a horse bet.
Yeah. And Dickinson got shot, but then he killed... Dickinson shot Jackson, but Jackson killed Dickinson in the duel.
Can you imagine... You and I put a bet on the Red Sox or something like that, and you think I cheated you, and you're like, I'm gonna duel you.
That's pretty sick. That's hardcore. That's why I put him in C. It's pretty sick.
I'd give him B. Honestly, that's a cool thing.
That's pretty badass. You got to be badass to do that,
especially because he survived getting hit.
yeah, he was able to survive.
And it wasn't even that. He got him. Jackson's first shot misfired, and according to the code, he should not have been able to refire, but recocking his gun, Jackson fired and killed his opponent.
Damn. He said, fuck the rules.
Yeah.
And just did his own thing. I'm going to just do it anyways. Shoot him anyways.
Jackson was not prosecuted for murder, and the duel had little effect on his successful presidency campaign, etc., etc.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so with that said, the last one, definitely S. You and I were both on the same page there. It was George Washington. Led us through Revolutionary War to win it, down with England, take the L. And he was a fucking unit. 6'2". This dude was so crazy. This dude was crazy. Shane Gillis had that bit. He was like, nobody's going to go across the Delaware River right now. It's frozen over. Nobody's going to be crazy enough to do that. And he's like, fucking bet. And they did.
Yeah, Shane Gillis's bit, for anybody who doesn't know, he has this whole bit on how the lead, which was what George Washington's teeth were, like his oh god, why am I blanking on the word? I know fake
dentures.
Teeth, but dentures, there we go. Were made out of lead, so he was literally more or less subjecting himself to constant lead poisoning, and there it is.
Look at his teeth, dude. Imagine dude smiling with those while he's coming at you to kill you.
But the whole point of the bit is that because he was so he was poisoned like that all the time. He was completely tapped in the head, and when we had the moment in December on Christmas Day, and the British, rightfully so, said no one, and I'm not going to say the word on the podcast, no one who is dumb would, or sorry, only a dumb person would cross the river at this time. But luckily, there's our president.
Yeah. He's like, imagine seeing a 6'2" redhead coming out with the donkey teeth. He's like, ah, ah, ah. Just like carrying a sword and a musket, just charging you in freezing temperatures.
The reason why Paul and I are so keen on having him in the S tier for his presidential health is because, I mean, for those, if you're an international listener or if you just don't know your U.S. history, he would become our first president, and all of the, essentially all of the acts that he took during his time leading the revolutionary forces during the Revolutionary War as the general, those can be attributed to his presidential years, because he not only was he helping to create a country, but he would then step into the shoes and become its first leader. So he's just a badass.
Yeah, he's the only president to not have had lived in the White House. They're building it during his presidency. John Adams moved in, I think, in the middle of his presidency, but he was the only one who never lived in the White House. There was no White House at the time. But yeah, he's the first president. He was 6'2", which is huge at the time. I mean, height has gone down has gone up and down over time. So like, here's a chart of height, at least up until about 18. So from 1810 to about 1980, as far as what's recorded.
We're not looking at the screen. We're looking at the chart.
Oh, you still are? Okay. Whoops. Yep. Let me share that. Let me see. Let me show you guys this here. Share my whole window. This right here. So, I mean, granted, like I said, 1810. I mean, this is quite a bit after his presidency. It has gradually gone up. It did dip a bit, but for the most part, he was pretty tall for his time. Because I mean, you can probably imagine that this, on average, probably went down. Like, it was probably down from here. So I mean, 170 centimeters to what's now on average closer to 178, 179. I mean, he was pretty tall back then. I mean, what's 6'2" in centimeters? I'm not even sure.
What is a kilometer? I don't deal with the metric system.
Yeah. So, anyways, he was pretty big for his time. So the dude was a unit. He was insane. So that's why I put him in S, and he stood up on the boats when everybody who was rowing on those boats was like, dude, we're too crazy to go across this right now. So he's like, nah, I'm gonna stand at the front.
I was gonna say, very famous painting from anybody, or for anybody who doesn't know, of when they crossed the Delaware, where he is, and obviously it's been, a little bit, added some drama to make the image that iconic, but you have the flag pightened to the back of the rowboat and him standing full on looking for it. And speaking of George Washington, pull up, just hit YouTube or something and go to Black Rifle George Washington commercial, because this is just going to sum up perfectly my thoughts on George Washington. And
let me pull this up here.
I don't think we'll get hit with anything for it, so you can throw the video up on the screen. It's so silly.
Is this it here?
I can find it if you can't. It's going to be, the opening scene is someone, a British person stepping on a tea bag. Or, sorry, a coffee bag.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I looked up George Washington Black Rifle, but can't really find much on it.
I have it right here.
Okay.
Here, let me text it to you. It's a YouTube short.
Oh, it's just a YouTube short. It might be this.
I just sent it to you.
Yeah, this is it. I got it. Okay, here we go. Can I share the audio as well? Yeah, also share audio. Cool.
Yep.
Coffee is forbidden. It's forbidden.
Start it back over.
Coffee is forbidden. Tea is His Majesty's drink. What is this?
And that's how Black Rifle Coffee was founded.
There you go.
Yeah,
There's George Washington for you.
I mean, for
Oh, I
anybody who
can't hear
doesn't
you,
know.
Stoph. There's no mic audio.
How about now?
Nothing yet. Where you're at? Where you at? I'm in some technical difficulties, it seems. Stoph, can you hear me? All right, let's see. Oh, yeah. Okay, it's because I shared audio. That's why. All right. Let me see. Let me share my screen. Maybe something else. Maybe that'll help.
How about now?
Yeah, nothing yet. One sec. All right, and it is just me now. So yeah, we had some audio issues, but not even just that, his mouse died too. So he couldn't, back out and come back in or something like that. But with that said, that was our tier list of the U.S. president's physical stance when they are in the presidency. As we mentioned, most presidents are typically on the older side, especially nowadays with the higher life expectancy and with less people getting into politics, especially at a younger age. Typically, politics now is not as favorable among younger generations. I think millennials is probably like the lowest bunch right now. Gen X is probably the last one that's like pretty into politics. Millennials is after that. And then obviously you have Gen Z and then Gen Alpha now, Gen Beta coming up. So I think it's going to become less and less popular, but we're going to need it eventually anyways. But with that said, hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode. It's a different one than usual, tier list. So maybe we'll do something like this in the future if we come up with some more ideas about tier lists we can do. If you guys have any ideas and you guys are still listening, just leave us a comment. I believe Spotify has comments now, I believe. So you can leave us a comment on Spotify. You can leave us a comment on YouTube, whatever you'd like. Let us know what tier list you guys would like us to do next. But with that said, we appreciate you guys listening and watching. Keep training. Go back to the gym. Eat some food. And we will see you guys later.